because of the attention. Now you remember the attention because the people in the international, in the diaspora, remember right? So, and then now, SWALIMO is now international, even overseas. And the people overseas are joining SWALIMO. And now, this guy is angry that the attention he was getting from the international community is now being given to SWALIMO president. It did not go down well with him. Mageva kokuthi leyo mali noma sekunema advocacy drive. Obviously, the advocacy drive without any support financially. Who is supporting the advocacy drive? The international people, Labama Swati, Labab diaspora, in the UK, in the Canadian regions, in the Irish, wherever. You understand? Why again now? Their focus will be on the president of SWALIMO, which is Mduduzi. And now, the so-called Zweli is no longer receiving the attention he was getting from the diasporians. So what does he do? Akanenzaba nani nenmaswati. Unenzaba nalama diasporians. Labega relaya a page in lakhe for information in Swaziland. And now, why is he discrediting SWALIMO president? He is discrediting SWALIMO president because ukabanga guti the people in the diaspora will teach the president of SWALIMO. He's discrediting SWALIMO president so that magaya kuletinzawo leti mhlambe utokhumbula ukuthi bozweli bebafandwa media houses bebafandwa mhlambe organization medias both South Africa in some way in the parts of Europe. We understand that being supporting him. And now there's a new rise, there's a leader, there's somebody who's advocating for change international. Remember, the person who was advocating for change internationally via his newspaper or via his online platform was Zweli. And then now the SWALIMO president is not using online platforms to advocate for change, but he is using physical appearances, attending board meetings, attending parliamentary sittings in the UK and in the diaspora region or in the international region, where he is advocating for the people in Swaziland, thus gaining more momentum and recognition and putting SWALIMO at the highest level in all the organizations that's in Swaziland, thus causing the tension between him and Kauzela. And one thing I'm going to tell you, when Kauzela was to launch SWALIMO, he did engage with Zweli Martin Dlamini in telling him, Guti, I am having challenges. With what? I am having challenges with the MSF. I am having challenges with the PPA. Because when I engage them, Batibona, I do not affiliate in anything. I'm an individual. So this is what happens. The SWALIMO president, because he had no structure, beganga nayo I body or structure, lesengamenda affiliate ku MSF, lesengamenda affiliate ku PPA. He was alone. Then because laba lebeka nabo kulomzabalazo bebaboshiwe basejele. Then he decided with other founding members lokufaka ekhathi lena lomdabula lobonakala sekathi yena we founder yeSWALIMO. No. Lo mdabula lesikhuluma ngaye lo lathi Zweli utawukhuluma ngaye is a founding member. Masikhuluma ukuthi Moloi has a vision. Then the people who I will start this thing nabo are called founding members. These so-called founding members includes lo Mdabula lesikhuluma ngaye. Uyabona? So, lo Mdabula lakhuluma ngaye ke Zweli was just a founding member kuSwalimo. Then this Zweli Martin Dlamini lesikhuluma ngaye. He said to Makaukau, don't start this movement. Don't start this organization. You understand? He spoke greatly against it. But because the president was alone, what formisha the organization called SWALIMO, which this Zweli Martin Dlamini and his friends and his circles thought it will fail. Unfortunately for them, this so-called SWALIMO grew big and faster and became a successful organization. Then this same Zweli Martin Dlamini said, SWALIMO is not a movement, it is a political party. The president of SWALIMO, Mduduzi Simelane, maintained ukuthi this is not a political party. This is one thing, a movement. They challenged him vigorously every day that SWALIMO is a political party, which he continued to maintain that this is a movement. When he explained in the birth of SWALIMO that SWALIMO will have regions, in the regions like laita bakona kona iswalimo beita uba letingundla letonke beita ba nema members ibe nemalunga everywhere whereby bekutawuhlanganiswa kube sa active government, which was not really a government, sa active formation a government somehow, whereby betawukhuluma then bathi laba bekunene, because they had SWALIMO will cover every region in Swaziland, will cover every constituency in Swaziland. And then the same people, bathi SWALIMO utenda umbrella, because SWALIMO was a movement. Everyone was welcome. The political parties were welcome. The so-called organization were welcome to be working with SWALIMO. They then took out a story. They remember the first story, SWALIMO is an umbrella to cover everyone. SWALIMO began to work on its own, independently working. I remember, let me tell you why SWALIMO also was born. Nitawukhumbula kahle makutawuhanjwa kuyiwe e-US Embassy. Buthi umhlonisha Gawuzela wathi asambeni siye embassy lapho sitawufike sivakalise tikhalo tethu khona sikhulume sibeke tikhalo tethu ukuthi sifuna. The opposition that umhlonisha Gawuzela got from this so-called MSF, from this so-called PPA, but umbani wena to tell us ukuthi sende in. However, umhlonisha Gawuzela with the PPA, with the MSF, or without them, called for the march to the US Embassy with the support now of SPLM, with the support of CPS, with the support of EFF Swaziland. And the other political parties did not advocate for the march. But after they saw in the near times ukuthi US Embassy seyivumile ukuthi sihambe siyowenda i-petition e-US Embassy, then saw that this was moving, they then began to want to join and be part and parcel of the same march, which Umhlonishwa called and was successful. Very much successful. When then we saw members of the so-called MSF and PPA and other political parties who did not believe holding umbhobho and speaking loudly. And one of them was the one who was reading the so-called petition. But at first they did not agree with him. Okay, let me continue. I was only making clarity yabo SWALIMO and why umhleli welphephandaba is solely and fighting even emotionally and bitterly against the organization called SWALIMO. Thus, writing stories each and every day about Gauzela, writing stories each and every day about SWALIMO, and trying his best to discredit the leader of SWALIMO. He has tried. But I am telling you today that he is failing, and dismally failing at doing that. There was another time where there was documentaries that were playing on the Swaziland news. Lama documentaries bega khuluma ngetindzaba te-struggle. Lama documentaries langa bega khuluma ngetindzaba tekuhlenzeka nekufa kwemaswati kuvetwa tithombe tebantfu labalimele labanye labafile babulewe bani ngule regime ngesikhathi 29 June. Kwase kwendeka because the standards of Facebook does not allow ukuthi uvete ingadi of violent graphics. Babese mhlawumbe bayayipenalize iSwaziland news. And then the so-called editor took his anger and frustrations on Gauzela. Let me tell you, wait. For Facebook to penalize you for graphic content, uqale akuwonishe first time. And then when you do it countless times, and then bese bayakupenalize. Lokusho ukuthi upenalizwa nje Swaziland using eveta graphic content lenetingadi hayi ukuthi iqale ngaGauzela. It's because nanayo umhlelo wephephandaba leSwaziland news bekangadi ukuthi kuveta tithombe letinengadi tithombe letivisa nabhlungu noma ihlabisela umtimba kutawenda ukuthi bampenalize, then bampenalize. Then wathatha ianger ne-frustration wathi ngimagawugawu. Then wathi yena emva kokuthi bantu beSWALIMO, followers of SWALIMO and non-followers of SWALIMO. Ngifuna kusho kanje, bekungasiyo iSWALIMO, bekubantu labalandzela umhlonisha Gauzela. Ba retaliate bathi hey awusitolele emfokati, awusoyekele umhlonisha Gauzela. Wathi umhleli weliphephandaba leSwaziland news. Kunjani waqonzisa kulawo mafenzi wathi ufuna kupenalize Gauzela. Kwathi ngelilanga kumele ukuthi Gauzela akhulume kaSwaziland Democratic News, kaSwaziland News, host a family meeting. This is what happens when Gauzela was about to host a family meeting. Just in less than 24 hours, let me say in less than 12 hours, he got a letter coming from Swaziland News telling him he can no longer host the so-called family meeting, which brought everyone to realize and know is Swaziland News. The so-called family meeting that brought you and me today, Swaziland News, was the so-called family meeting which was the founder of the family meeting was Umhlonisha Gauzela. The person who was shooting Lama recordings, a family meeting, was Victor. Victor is comrade, comrade Makucha, SWALIMO, was the one recording those clips, the family meeting. Which also gives us strongest belief that family meeting is a baby project yamagawugawu nebahlonishwa nababoshini. He then took out a letter saying, go to family meeting, let our host our Swaziland News. Listen, so listen, kuwo wonke lokho ngifuna ubalela ama-bygones, nalamagqubu, nalozondo, nalokukwata ukuthi kuqhamukaphi kuzweli Martin Dlamini, azafike la sikhona khona where he is dividing the strike by attacking SWALIMO. Because inenkinga, especially the members lalandzela le party la affiliate kuyo Zweli. Banenkinga yekudefenda vigorously info leliqiniso ukuthi sitrackli sikhona khona la sikhona khona namuhla sibanjelelwa nguzweli Martin Dlamini. Why? Because as athi yena kune demigod lengimagawugawu, it is because he thought he was the demigod. Usufika etheni bantu ba worshipa magawugawu because he solely believed he was the one who was supposed to be worshipped. That is why he comes with that name. Gods. That is why the other members, but the Makoko utenda a god. Masota Gates. Why are we here? We are here, and the topic was to clearing the way, removing obstacles. And the obstacle is now is the editor of Swaziland News. Let's number 5, number 4, if I'm not mistaken. Nati, this so-called editor of Swaziland News, let's track is a lie. Zweli Martin Dlamini, if we can talk about his history, which I won't like to do, but I will start off where I knew him and followed Gusu Upegap. This so-called editor, logo wasebenzela ngisho ngwazi, wakwambhala makawukawu. Nifini kumbula kahle, naliphepha lethi ingwazi. Ingwazi yini, if I'm not mistaken, I'm really trying to figure out is it ingwazi or what. But the same editor abhalela ingwazi, yeah, I think it's ingwazi, abhalela leyo ngwazi. Wake wabhala magawugawu wathi magawugawu uhambena Nelsi wemotha baye Durban labafike khona la Zwito wababamba khona. Akhulume mangala lihlakahlaba lezo wathuka waze wathi nyalo magawugawu unetinga nemfati wakhe lo yabakhulumisa Dr. Neshong, which was a lie, which was not true. Lo Zweli enkhuluma ngaye, this Zweli that I'm talking about, he has a history of just making stories out of nowhere. He has a history of just building stories out of the blue for certain people so that he will gain the momentum to be heard. But when they never want to make them stories. They will come to the public and declare what's going a businessman of 100,000. Give 100,000 good to go. You understand? But they have the tendencies of making themselves superiors. But baningela kolani imoto, usho imoto lebe very fake gearbox, le moto inzala le iguyi, ya very fake gearbox, ya very pagele if it gearbox. In the public sense, uvela uzothi editor of Swaziland News has given kolani President Westnasi BMW lemhlophe, which was a lie. Wathatha into lefilo walahlela kulombane bambu because angeka khona ukuyilungisa. Understand? He did that easily and we believed him. You people, you same people, you the one who was clapping hands. But the same news came out ukuthi leya moto leya yafika vele ingahambi namhla kuloku sola ihambi. Good lo ikhulumile because he's the so-called editor. Esiyamsaba Zweli expose into expose abantu. Leaders has been quiet. Political leaders has been quiet. They are afraid. The person contains secrets. Let me tell you about Zweli. Zweli, when he created this so-called page, like this so-called company called Zwemat, private investigators. The so-called private investigation, labeka wente Zweli, beka pika nge blackmail abantu. Beka phila ngewokuthi athi angathola inzaba yakho akulanzelela athi angakushutha qethe bese uyabuya in the public. So buya la kuwe ngasese utokutshela wena athi kuwe mawungakhipha imali engaka utak expose. uphile njani ngikubhlephela baba that company yakhe lezwemali, it is the same company that put him in exile. It is not because of the fight against the regime. The story sekuthi yena bekashaywa amaphoyisa ukuthi ubhala ngemswati sitemuva yena aza exile. Titori takhe tikuhamba landzela tindzaba letingamfaki ahambe angena etindlini tebantu uzutholakala ungena ngelifastelo kula indzaba yabona kuje lengafuni ukukhuluma ngayo amkhaza nemfati usukela abantu ungena indzaba letingamfaki letingamdzini uthi la uyi-private abe violate imalungelo ebantfu the right to privacy. Bese uyaphuma la public uyabhala uthina so investigate this guy that I'm telling you about. I am not just discrediting him. I'm not just speaking to him to kill his character or assassinate him as he is trying to do with Mduduzi. The reason why I'm here, it is not to destroy Zweli, but the reason is to remove him from being an obstacle whereby sesibonile maswati intombi afile, whereby sesibonile maswati intombi alahlekule imiphefumulo, whereby sesibonile maswati intombi asejele kungunamuhla kayingena indzaba yabo baqede ubhizi ngalokunye. He knows very well and clear ukuthi labahlonishana ababili abalapha ejele bako-joined naloyo magawugawu. Labahlonishwa labalapha ejele bayinfo yinyelo magawugawu. The reason why yinyelo batawubhala abanye bathi zibani akasiyo iswalimo, zibani bo bahlonishwa ejele abayathi naneswalimo makawukhuluma lo is because lo magawugawu ngalendlela yokuthi uku-exile he has no direct contact kulaba bantfu labasejele. Kubunayo i-direct contact nabo mthandeni nabaqede. Ngabe the story is different about their affiliation kulo mzabalazo. Then because kuze magawugawu relate message iyofika bomthandeni nabaqede fanele ihambe tigabade bantfu labathide mayifika le kulabahlonishwa ifika sekungilenye info lekungasasiyo lena la ikhulumile. That is the reason noma ngabe bayakhuluma nabo le lokufika magawugawu sekufika seku-fourth party noma third party information le ingasayendi isense. That is the reason why magawugawu akakhoni ukuhlangana nabo bani nabo baqede bakhuluma umqondo munye. Lokumhluphako editor weSwaziland News Zweli Martin Dlamini Guti, he thought he was the only hero here, and he wanted us to always worship that and recognize that. That is why every time magakhuluma utathi sisetigangeni thine lana asifike sashiye emakhaya ethu sashiyele emaswati lalela la Zweli wasuka eSwatini abaleka inkinga takela tende personal la kule live hayi ukuthi bekajoyine umzabalazo lo lesikhuluma ngayo wawuwet and hold. Pudemo can attest to that umzabalazo ngalethi tikhathi wawukhona nje but bongekho kule peak level lo wafika kiyo emva ukuthi bahlonishwa baqale ukuthi akaje go deliver ama petitions. The so-called PPA or the so-called MSF, which now ihamba etindzaweni etinkundleni ihamba le yafika yena nakulo kuvakashela tinkundla naleto tindzawo leto iyokhuluma, does not to put ayifuni kubeke icredit kuthi lo mshikashika lo wagcina usibekela sibeke khona wasuka ngalabahlonishwa ngenzaba yokuthi athi Themba Masuku bomagawugawu aphe ma minutes bomthandeni bobaqede na magawugawu bebakhuluma lapha kaSwaziland News batshele maswati ukuthi akahanjwe kuyodeliver ema petitions etinkundleni in their constituencies official kwaba into lekahle lokufaka ekhathi onke ama political activists asukuma ayetinkundleni lapho lekwende safika la sikhona manje bona they don't want to acknowledge them. They don't want to acknowledge how powerful they still want to maintain one thing. Bafuna nje kumaintaina ukuthi labahlonishwa kude lichaza lebadlalini. Listen here, political parties. Listen here, so-called presidents of the so-called political parties. The impact, the steppies, sekufika la sikhona today, where the whole world is aware of the suffering, where the whole world knows about Swaziland and the struggle, was the work of these 3 MPs. And for you not to acknowledge that, you are being offside and totally awkward. Which you can put and try. Most of the Swazis, even here, let's see my Facebook comrades, let's see my June comrades. Now my June comrades are more than the comrades who were there in the ground since the beginning of the struggle. The problem with something is because if somebody doesn't know anything, they will criticize it. If it's new, they will criticize it. If it's bigger than them, they will try to destroy it. Listen here. All our political parties, sengphumela sesihlokweni, akayekele kuthatha structures saseswatini